I think it's helpful to think of women's health as societal infrastructure. This thought came to me. I was sitting at a dinner that JP Morgan was organizing for their infrastructure fund. So these are people investing into things like electricity grid and water pipelines and gas pipelines. And I thought, well, actually, you could think of women's bodies together with our medicines, our healthcare systems, as our pipelines where our life energy runs into society, right? It runs through our body. We have to have healthy bodies to participate in society. And when you look at the data showing that women live 25% more of their life in poor health than men, and you see that this poor health is distributed throughout their whole life, we can see that there is a very, in a sense, wasteful system. We don't actually make women thrive well.
That's Ida Tin. She's the co-founder of Clue and the woman who coined the term FemTech. In this special episode of Women Disrupting Tech, she's my guest to explore what happens when we stop treating women's health as a niche and start seeing it as infrastructure for society. We talk about why continuous hormonal data might be the missing layer in women's health, why prevention does not fit most current healthcare business models, and what it takes to raise capital in a space that investors still struggle to understand. You'll also hear why Europe has a unique opportunity to lead in gender-informed healthcare and how Ida's FemTech Assembly is helping to shape the future of women's health. So if you care about how health, data and capital shape the systems we build, here's my conversation with Ida Tin. Hey Ida Tin, good afternoon. Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. It's an honor to have you. Let's start with some background. So you coined the term FemTech years ago, but how did you get from coining FemTech to becoming a senior advisor at Sprint and the founder of the FemTech Assembly?
Yeah, that was a long journey. Many things happened. So first of all, I was co-founder of Clue, which is an app for women's health that I started before coining the term. And then after being CEO there for about a decade, I decided that it was time for other people to take over who were maybe better suited going forward for the next type of company that the company would morph into. And then I took some time to kind of think about what I wanted to do. And I decided I wanted to do nothing for a while. And as I was doing nothing, I find myself traveling around the world talking about FemTech because I kept being invited to speak at different places. And it was an incredible opportunity to meet the FemTech community around the world. And after I'd done that for a while, I realized that, well, hold on, I'm doing the kind of work you would do if you were in a think tank. Try to connect people all the way from investment banks to people thinking about starting a startup. And I thought I wanted to give myself sort of a container around my work. So I decided to start FemTech Assembly, a think tank. And then as I was just doing that, this opportunity came in because life takes its weird turns. And this was from Sprint, which is the federal German agency for breakthrough innovation. And they do something they call challenges, which are innovation programs, grant programs. And they said, Ida, you have said FemTech and female health 100 times in our conversations. Why don't you try and scope a challenge around something in women's health and what would you do? And I said, well, there's one data set that is really missing in women's health, which is having continuous data on women's hormones. So here I am, halfway through scoping this challenge around continuous hormone monitoring.
Okay, so going back to Clue, can you maybe for background purposes, what was Clue about?
So it started out with the question in my mind, why has there been so little innovation in family planning methods since the pill came out? And I thought, what if we could take out our phones that could tell us today you cannot get pregnant or today you can get pregnant? Mm-hmm. So that idea started out as a hardware idea and then morphed into being an app that helps women understand their reproductive cycle. And by now it is kind of a health companion for women through their reproductive lives, so it can help you understand how to get pregnant, track a pregnancy, menopause, periods, and many other things. And we have done many scientific collaborations because we have one of the largest data sets in the world on women's cycles. So
Mhm.
we work together with research institutions from around the world to learn more about the women's cycle and how it is impacted, for instance, by pollution and other things. And we also took Clue through FDA clearance as the world's first 100% data-driven type of birth control. I should say in bracket, the product is not on the market. That has a long story to it, but in a way, that was my goal setting out. And after 10 years, we kind of reached that goal and then decided, to step down.
Okay. So you initially, if I understand it correctly, you've co-founded Clue with 3 guys, right?
Yeah, even 4, actually. Yes.
Oh, 4 even. Oh, okay. So what was that like to work on a women's health problem, fertility, and measuring when you're ready to have a baby or not? What was it like to work on that particular problem with 4 men?
Mm. Um, Small clarification was actually to help women understand their menstrual cycles. Sometimes to figure out when to try for a baby, sometimes for the opposite, and many
Mm,
other reasons. It was great. I am a big believer in FemTech companies being built by diverse teams for the world. I think
uh,
it's really important that women are part of building these products and services. Otherwise, I think we end up with solutions that feels off. But
uh-huh,
also the other way around, we need men to understand that women's health is relevant to all of society. And we need
uh-huh.
men's talents and energy and money and many other things to be part of innovating in women's health. So I was grateful for these men. I'm still very grateful for all the many men who have worked in Clue as team members, as investors, as co-founders. Without them, Clue would not be where we are today.
No. So I want to double click on one thing. Why is it important for men to understand women's health and menstrual cycles, except for the really obvious part?
So if we look at women's healthcare, it's a really expensive part of society. It's very important to run healthcare, and it turns out that a lot of our spending goes to women health related things in our healthcare systems.
Hmm.
It's also very important when women don't get adequate healthcare because then they have a lot of sick days from work, they drop out of the workforce too early, and of course, their quality of life goes down. And women are, in many ways, important fabric and sort of glue in our society. They very much keep families functional. Um, so when women are not thriving, it has an incredibly large impact on their families, their local communities, and our national economies. Um, and I would say, on an even bigger scale, we have a world that has been built very much without women's participation. And we have a lot of global and planetary issues that need a little bit of um, rethinking, I think, to solve. And we need diverse ways of thinking and perspectives. And women have different life experiences because of the biology we live in. And we need to bring these perspectives in as we start solving our planetary problems. Because it turns out, I think, that as we're learning to care for the planet, we are learning that we live in a regenerative system. It's a very interconnected biological system. And we have to approach things with a more holistic worldview to actually make them healthy. So it's the same thing we're learning as we're learning to care for women's bodies that we need to learn on a planetary scale.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting observation that there's a lot of similarities between the two. I agree though that there's um, if we understand both better, this will the planet will be a better place to live on for sure. Going back to Clue for a minute, was that app ever launched? Yes, I think.
Clue is one of the leading apps in women's health today. We have more than 10 million users in 190 countries. I'm happy to say that the app is well and thriving.
Okay, so in the end, all the hard work did pay off.
Yes, very much so. It did. And as I mentioned before, we have a really large data set on women's health that is also very diverse. It's coming from all over the planet. And this is really important because in women's health, there's an acute lack of research and there's acute lack of data. And so be able to, for scientists at, Harvard and Columbia and MIT and Stanford and many other amazing research institutions to be able to access parts of this data set, of course, fully anonymized, and conduct research is important, and hopefully something that will then, in the end, lead to women getting better information when they get to their doctor.
So about health tracking, so we can track a lot of data nowadays, like glucose data, and now also with Clue, we can check is it on hormones or on menstrual cycle level that we can check?
So Clue is about the reproductive cycle, and the
Hmm.
work I'm doing with Spren will be on hormones.
Okay, so what is missing on the hormonal data then that we don't currently
Yes.
have?
So we can test hormones in blood or in urine or in saliva, but
Mhm.
those are snapshots of our levels, and hormones, they fluctuate. In women, they fluctuate a lot during the
Yeah.
day, during the cycle, during pregnancy, and we don't have much granular data on hormones. And for the average person, hormone testing is not readily available. It's something that you can pay for. You get this one off data point, but it's very expensive and it's cumbersome. So, the way we have, you mentioned continuous glucose monitoring or sleep data, um, we don't have for hormones yet.
Okay. So what is the missing piece there? Is it just that it's really cumbersome to collect, or is it that it's difficult to collect, or a combination of the two?
So, the part that is missing is continuous. That is really the
Uh-huh.
missing point here. We can do heart rate on something like an Oura ring, and we have it
Yeah.
continuous. But for hormones, we don't have a way of getting it continuously yet. The technology has just simply not been built yet because it is, for different reasons, very difficult to build.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the attempt is to try, and hopefully, in a couple of years, we will have something that is on the path to be something a consumer can find and buy that is continuous.
Yeah. So what's the impact of it of not having this data? What is happening as a result of not having the data? Or what is not
So,
having happening?
yeah, well, both. I think let's talk about perimenopause, for instance. This is a moment where women stop having cycles and their hormones change dramatically. Um, we know from the data that many women are simply misdiagnosed when they go to the healthcare providers with some of the symptoms that might be extreme mood swings, hot flushes, sleep problems, joint pains, and many, many other things. The list of symptoms is actually really long. And yet, often women will be prescribed antidepressant medicines, anti anxiety medication, when in fact it's a hormonal problem. So that is one problem. But if you look at something like cardiovascular disease, brain diseases, or autoimmune diseases, all of these probably have related to hormonal fluctuations, but they are not well understood yet. So we're hoping that this data set will reveal some of these connections, maybe correlations, we don't know, because we don't
Hmm.
have the full data. And then I'll just mention finally that we routinely give hormonal contraception to women. We give hormonal replacement therapy, and all of these medications are given where we actually don't have a good sense of what the right dosage should be for an individual.
Yeah, and
And we
if
know
it's
that's
right cure, if it's actually the right medicine to
so.
give.
If it even if it's the right medicine, that we're giving it in the right amount, and then we know, for instance, that if you're from South America or from Southeast Asia, you probably need different dosages of something like contraception. And so the whole idea of how do we give medicine that is really personalized and how do we care for people in a personalized way, we believe that if we had hormonal data, we could get much closer to doing that well than we can
Hmm.
today and move from curing illnesses to do more preventive medicine,
Yeah.
which our
Yeah. And
healthcare system needs because we are all getting older and sicker and our healthcare systems are buckling under the pressure. We need to start doing something different to keep having the level of care that we have, or even better.
yeah. Yeah. Or keep people out of the system for as long as possible. Yeah, I was listening to an episode of Freakonomics this morning, which dealt with the shortage of physicians, of general practitioners, and basically one of the things that the guests all said is also part of indeed prevention and keeping people out, and we don't do nearly enough, not even on the men's part of the equation.
No. I
So
mean, we could, for
there's
instance, imagine that if we could understand people's hormonal health better, we could understand, for instance, something like phenotypes of PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a condition that many women suffer from and gives a lot of problems, a lot of fertility problems. If we could have a better sense of who are these people, we could get them care before they potentially get sick. So, yes, we need more data to do better preventive care.
Yeah. So I also read somewhere that you think this is in part an infrastructure issue.
Yes, I think it is. I think it's helpful to think of women's health as societal infrastructure. This
Uh-huh.
thought came to me. I was sitting at a dinner that JP Morgan was organizing for their infrastructure fund. So these are people investing into things like electricity grid and water pipelines and gas pipelines. And I thought, well, actually, you could think of women's bodies together with our medicines, our healthcare systems, as our pipelines where our life energy runs into society, right? It runs through our body. We have to have healthy bodies to participate in society. And when you look at the data showing that women live 25% more of their life in poor health than men, and you see that this poor health is distributed throughout their whole life, we can see that there is a very, in a sense, wasteful system. We don't actually make women thrive well. So their energy is leaking out of the pipes, if you like. And
Yeah.
this is very costly for society. So I thought if we as society think of women's health, again, including healthcare systems, culture, medicine, as as a really important part of what makes a society efficient and healthy and thriving, we should invest more. And then we have the other data sets showing that there is nothing you can invest in as a society that gives a better return than women's health. The European Investment Bank, they say if you invest €1 in women's health, you get 26 euros back. It is very smart for societies to not lose all this human potential and have all these very costly diseases hunt women for their whole lives. So,
Yeah. I was wondering, because it's a bit going back to something we discussed earlier, but why do investors not see this opportunity yet?
I think they are increasingly, I think there are many reasons for this, and some of them are cultural. Men generally don't understand much about what it feels like to have a woman's body. There is a
Hmm.
whole set of life experiences that women have that we have done a poor job of telling the world about. And the world has done a poor job of listening and asking questions. They have been hindered by taboos and shame and many other things. So men are not invited into understanding that there is this big part of life that is very invisible in our culture and that has been very overlooked and under-researched and underfunded, under-innovated in. So those are some of the reasons. But I think it's changing. We see some of the big players now paying attention. We see McKinsey came out with a big report. We see the Gates Foundation allocating money. We see national governments allocating special funding for women's health. So we do see change coming, but these are big and heavy systems to change. So we need a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, to add to that change is coming, I read that I think the company name is Hologic that was acquired by two private equity parties for 18 billion euros. The good thing about it is that there's attention to female health because this is a female health care startup. The not so optimal news here was that it was founded by men. So the
Yeah.
wealth distribution doesn't go to women, but I think there is attention and it's growing indeed.
Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, you were sitting at this dinner and you think of, okay, well, actually, the women's body is and women's health is sort of infrastructure for that we need to fix to make sure that energy is not leaking, that productivity is not leaking, that we can actually channel our resources in the right way. Did you actually test this by chance with those infrastructure investors?
I did a little bit, but it's definitely on my to-do list because I don't know anything about trading stocks, but I was playing around on my app for like 10 minutes, my banking app, to see if I could invest, 100 euros just to see how that system works. And I was trying to find, a pool of companies in women's health that I could invest in. And I understood that this doesn't exist. You can invest into a pool of energy companies or, microconductors or something. And I then made a little post on LinkedIn and said, hey, why doesn't this exist? And so many people said, it should exist. Let's go build this and let's create this. And I said, well, this is not my field of expertise, but I would love somebody to pick up that idea and maybe take contact to JP Morgan or some other bank and suggest that they start an infrastructure fund in women's health. So the idea is open and free for all to take and run with.
Okay, well then ING and Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and all those other parties, BlackRock, here's your call to action. Start a female health infrastructure fund.
Yes,
there is
healthcare.
There are healthcare funds which include or which may include companies that also produce medication for women, but that's really generic. It's not quite the same. No. And there's a lot of. Do you know if there are any venture capital companies that are specializing in this field?
There is. They all tend to be early stage funds, and they all tend to be quite small. Their fund sizes. There is a big gap for later stage venture funding in women's health and in FemTech. That's another idea that's free for all to run with.
Cool. So again, here's your call to action, also for VCs listening to this podcast. So with Sprint, you're now scoping a major challenge to unlock hormonal data. How can it help women in Europe? How can it help Europe in general?
So unfortunately, we see a political direction in the US where anything that is gender informed, medicine that is gender sensitive, is being sort of, I don't know, it feels like it becomes a taboo to talk about gender and sex differences. And that's really unfortunate because we know that women express symptoms for a number of general health conditions differently or disproportionately than men. And we need to understand gender when we talk about healthcare. So that's a problem in America, but it's of course also a great opportunity for Europe to not do the same. And I'm pretty sure that we will start having better health outcomes than in the regions where they do not look at gender when they care for people. And hopefully this can be something that can draw investment and talent and activity to Europe, because there is so much also business potential to be unlocked in women's health. So, and then hopefully we can't discuss it, but we can show better health outcomes by a more gender informed approach. And hopefully that will then be the winning argument also in America and other places where gender is becoming censored, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that at some point people in the US will find out that there is a reason for this to be, for health to be approached on a gender basis, for the simple reason that bodies work differently.
Yes, exactly. And maybe if I were to sort of take that one step further, I would say that I believe that designing societies for health in the broadest understanding of the meaning whether it's our bodies being healthier or our communities or our nature, our environment, must be a winning strategy and what is called for given the problems our planet has. And when I look around the planet, I think Europe is in a really unique position to be the healthiest continent on the planet and make that a competitive advantage. Because getting people to come to Europe with their talents is important. And I think it's a really big kind of attractive point to be a healthy place for people to want to come and be here. And because, sometimes people say, how do we become more like Silicon Valley, or how do we compete with China or the Middle East? And I think we have to be uniquely European. And I think one of the ways we can be uniquely European is to focus on health.
Amen. No, and it's also interesting, because I don't think the US has any blue zones, whereas Europe at least has a couple. Asia has a couple where people tend to live long lives and healthy lives. So yes, I agree that there's a huge opportunity for Europe, especially to do this in a safe and let's say also climate friendly way.
Yes, because I believe that the systems, they affect each other. We get healthy also by being in healthy environments and care about not polluting our natural environments. And we are healthy when we are in communities where we care about each other. If we have societies where we only care about money, we end up with unhealthy societies in a number of ways. So the orientation towards health is not just about healthcare. I would say it's a mindset that understands and kind of bow down to the fact that we are regenerative systems as individuals, as communities, as a planet. And we must design according to the principles of what sustains life. That's my view.
Absolutely. So what kind of innovations are you hoping to attract with the Sprint Challenge? What kind of founders could enroll?
So if you are building a biosensor that can do continuous hormone monitoring anywhere on the planet, I definitely want to hear from you and have you be part of this ecosystem. I recognize that it's a very complex system to go all the way from now we have a biosensor to we understand what the data actually says about the body to how do we bring this to market, how do we business models, how do we educate people to understand what this hormone data means, how do we change practice and clinical kind of protocols in the healthcare system. There are many, many, many parts that needs to come together. But we have to start somewhere. And I am now starting at sort of point zero, which is how do we generate the data? So anybody who can be part of that work are most warmly invited to take contact and be part of this.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say, it's at the start, it's about how do we collect data from biosensors, from devices that can do that continuously. So we better start to understand
Exactly.
all those cycles. And
Yes,
then from
exactly.
there, we can move to, okay, how do we get this data to build medication, to build protocols, to
Yes.
build better health system, let's say, for
Yes.
women's health.
And properly overlay this hormonal data set with many other data sets, because of course we need to understand bodies in a more holistic way. But yes, so this is where I start. And I do think that if we had better understanding of hormones, it could be very transformational actually for so many areas of health, and not just for women, also for men, but starting with women, because women are our hormones are a little more crazy and a little more complex. So we're starting at the hard place.
Yeah. So can you share a couple of transformations that you see coming if we if we manage to collect this type of data?
So every single woman goes through perimenopause and menopause, and these are really, really radical and kind of almost violent transformations for many people. And we know that women drop out of the workforce sooner than they would have if their symptoms were not plaguing them. So that's a really big one if we can help that transition get smoother. But also something like cardiovascular disease. So women's hormones very much impact our health of our heart and our cardiovascular systems. And women die a lot from heart disease. If we could manage that better, that would be a huge win. We know that women get Alzheimer's more. Is that related to hormones? Question mark. What if we could work on that? Many women take the pill every day. They don't actually, do that well. They have many symptoms. Could we do that better for them? That would be massive. Yeah, I think, and again, like, it's sometimes a little bit chicken egg. Like, we don't have the data, so we don't know what difference it would make. And we don't know what difference it would make, so we don't start building the data sets or do the long haul to do the innovation to get the data. But I think that's why public money is also needed for this research. We need to leapfrog this technology so we get the data, and I would be very surprised if that doesn't unlock a whole slew of follow-on research that needs to be done to understand how women's hormones actually impacts lots of other health conditions. So we just don't understand it yet.
So let's start collecting data to make sure that we start understanding this and that we can actually start connecting the dots.
Exactly. Yes.
So I want to talk about the FemTech assembly. First, what is it? And then on the back of that, what is the relationship with the Sprint Hormone Challenge, if any?
Yeah, so I wanted to create sort of a container around myself, because there I was traveling around the world, speaking at conferences, at meeting FemTech innovators and the bankers and the investment managers and all kind of people. And I sort of realized that I was doing the kind of work you would be doing if you had a think tank, trying to connect people, trying to understand what are these big patterns here and how do we maybe influence policymakers. And so I decided to start FemTech Assembly. And then this opportunity came in from Sprint and kind of derailed me a little bit from my think tank. So they are not connected. But I would say my thinking has evolved over the last year, because first I was thinking, okay, think tank, it's like you bring some smart people together, you kind of develop your thinking, you write a paper, maybe a podcast or other things.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more I understand that there are so many people who come and they say, I really want to do something in FemTech. And they have an impressive career behind them, but they don't quite know how to make a difference in this sector. And I thought, what if FemTech Assembly could be more like a social movement, more like almost like a hashtag or some way to say, we are all part of this global change. We are all part of this work. And we do it in so many different ways. Whatever part of the world we sit in, we do our bit, but to help people understand that they are part of this global change. And so actually I had a really interesting call with a branding agency that I was kind of gifted a branding exercise very generously, and it was inspiring to see that FemTech assembly could be more like almost like a stamp that people can take and say, I'm hosting this event and I will use this stamp, FemTech assembly, and be part of this global community, but very freely distributed. Because I don't really want to build an organization and have to raise money for it and, spend my energy building the organization. I want the organization to just be totally flat and open and everybody can pull in the same direction, but lend them like a voice or credibility and the sense of community. So it's information, but I would love it to be, more like a social movement actually. And
for the
totally
techie, for the techies among us, it's a bit sounds a bit like open source software.
Yeah, it's like an open source software piece of code. Here is just a little snippet, but you can use it so that we can find each other, we can connect. And once I have a little more time, I would love to sort of kick it off and lend my energy to it, but really more than anything, enable everybody's energy to be challenged into this work.
Yeah. Do you think, or do I understand correctly that you think the efforts towards women's health in general are too fragmented? So there's a lot of things happening around the world, but there's no sort of cohesive underlining action?
I wouldn't say it's too fragmented. I think everybody that pulls in this direction, whatever way they do it, including you, thank you so much for having me. I think it's really valuable. So it's not to kind of centralize it. It's just to enable and to amplify voices. It is to channel more good energy to this work.
Yeah. Okay. So it's more again about the infrastructure that
it's
pushes it forward.
It's a simple line of code that you can copy paste and morph and change so it fits your purpose, but that hopefully it will help amplify your work and give you a stage and a voice.
So will there be sort of a FemTech assembly conference then next year?
If I could make my dreams come true, I would probably build a simple website with this is what it is, and this is why we're doing it. And here's your kit. If you want to go do a FemTech assembly somewhere, you want to have an event, you want to write a paper, you want to do podcasts, here's a little bit of infrastructure for you to go. And here's the hashtag, and here are our principles. So, be kind, be generous, be, trustworthy, all of this. And if you agree to this way of being in the world, that, take this name and go use it the best way you can.
Okay. Sounds really cool.
Be an assembler, do assemblies.
Yeah, I think that there's a bunch of health events now starting in the Netherlands. Embrace Health is doing one. I think you were at an event of Fluria earlier this year with Anna.
FemTech United.
FemTech, that was the name I was looking for. So that's the type of events you would be looking for. And then the podcast, I'll get to that in a bit. One thing that I was still wondering about, it intersects with Clue, it intersects with female health more in general. In some way, shape, or form, it may actually also have links with the assembly work you're doing, and it's around data and privacy, because those are really important, both from a user perspective, but also from a data perspective. Because if you don't safeguard your data, then the quality of your data can be not so good. So I want to talk about your experience with Clue. What is one thing that founders in the FemTech space should keep in mind if they build an app like Clue, or if they do build a biosensor, for instance, that tracks hormonal data?
I'm very happy you asked that question. I think it's incredibly important. So I would say if you it matters where you build this technology because that defines under which regulation you are. And if you are in Europe, you are under the best data protection regulation in the world. Build it together with people that are like the ones who will end up using the product, i.e., build with women if you want to build for women. Make sure that privacy is not a negotiable. It's never like, oh, business goals of privacy. Privacy is built into the DNA, and that's the premise. Without trust, we cannot build anything. We ask for the most intimate data, and we must honor and govern this with uttermost respect. So that's a non-negotiable. And then I will say, use common sense. Don't ask for more data than you can give value back. Don't ask them where they live and for their phone number if the service you're giving them has nothing to do with where they live and their phone number, for instance. Make sure that the user is in control. They can delete the data, they can port the data, they can, have agency of where this data go. Write the privacy policies so they actually understand them. If you cannot look users in the eyes and explain what your business model is, it's probably not the right business model. If you cannot explain users how much data is being sent back to the ad networks because they wouldn't like it, you are probably sending too much data back to the ad networks. Have an imaginary empty chair around the board meeting with an imaginary user sitting there. Make sure that you know that they are hearing everything you say in the board meeting. If you're saying things that you don't want users to hear, you are not being ethical. That's my navigation.
Yeah. And also the same applies, I think, to or should apply to investors.
Because yes, of course, the funding.
Especially in Europe, investors start to ask for how do you do this with privacy, and especially if you talk about like really sensitive data, like hormonal data, you have to have an answer to that question. If you don't, then maybe figure that out first before going anywhere.
I agree, and investors must be willing to not pressure startups to get profit at all cost. Don't ask them to build business models that compromise data privacy. And definitely don't reward the companies that breaches the users' trust or do things that are straight up illegal. Maybe just a side note, but I'm actually working on a paper for how to be a good ethical data company in women's health, because it appears to me that we have never kind of, not on a regulatory level, but sort of culturally agreed on what is it to be behaving well. And I think for users, it would be very nice if they could very easily orient themselves and say, oh, this is a company who agreed that this is good data practice. Or this company didn't want to sign that. Oh, maybe I'll take the one that have said yes to this set of rules. And I'm working on this with Karen Walters, who is a regulatory lawyer. And if it didn't get stuck on my desk, we would publish this soon. And it can be, we can discuss it. It's not like the truth, but it's at least one attempt of saying, this is how we define it. So we can have a conversation and people can orient themselves.
Yeah.
I'll put it on LinkedIn when it's ready.
Please send me the link when it's ready, because then I can actually reference it in the show notes.
Yes,
so people can actually read it.
Yes.
So going back to investors for a minute. Investors still see women's health as a sort of niche topic, although that is now changing as we discussed. So how can founders reframe this to be the next big opportunity? Because you talked about the €1 in is 26 euros out part. I think there's a lot of value in there. But what else can founders say?
It's definitely helpful that somebody like McKinsey came out with a report saying we're losing $1 trillion every year in lost opportunity because we don't take proper care of women's health needs. I would say Actually, I have written a guide for male investors who wants to invest into female founders building FemTech. So this is very specific, but I mention that because you think you have a business conversation when you go and raise money. But there is so many other things going on in that room that has nothing to do with business numbers. There's a lot of gender stuff. There's a lot of cultural stuff. There's a lot of communication stuff. And it's difficult to build that bridge where a male investor, which it typically still is, and a female founder building something for a need that this male body has never experienced and will never experience. So there are tips and tricks, and that's what I try to write down in this guide. But I would say the main message is, if you are a man who wants to invest in women's health, you have to do a little bit of homework. The same way you would have to if you wanted to start investing in cryptocurrencies or blockchain technologies. Like, you go understand a few things, and then about the market and about the opportunities, and then also understand what all these gender and culture things are. What is it that's happening in the room? But I mean, if somebody says it's a niche, I think as a female founder, I will say, that's very interesting you think that. Here are all the reasons why I don't think that. And and then I will say, and by the way, for our next meeting, I would love you to do your homework, because this was an uninformed comment. But okay, so that's maybe a little bit arrogant, and maybe you can also do something in a corner of women's health that is niche. But then I would say, if you look at women's health as a category, it's a huge industry. And to fill all the many gaps we see in this landscape, we have to do all these different things. So you should not regard this little one thing as niche, but rather as part of filling this big picture.
Yeah. So maybe it's a 1,000-piece puzzle where you're looking at something that is indeed one piece of the puzzle, but it's part of the 1,000 pieces that needs to be laid or put in place.
Exactly. Yes. And then I would also, in some very gentle, kind of humble, kind of friendly way, say, I might know something that you don't know because of the life experiences I've had. And see if there's a way to invite the people listening to say, there might be something I don't know. And this is difficult because our culture doesn't invite people to have that mindset when they're in positions to write checks, or, maybe they meet somebody and they don't fit the picture of what they think a great leader will look like, or what a great founder will look like, or what it means to be ambitious, or, and so we have to somehow tease out this openness where, wait, you have to listen differently. You have to listen with more sensitivity, more humbleness.
Is there a way to sort of tease that at the start of a meeting, to really invite people on the, let's say, especially investors, to open their minds to the possibility that I'm not a female founder, but let's suppose I'm a woman for a minute. I'm a female founder, and I have a different lived experience, which can teach you something.
Yes,
that you didn't know, because I personally, I'm a huge fan of the starting with "Tell me something I don't know."
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think if you, you can send the guide to them, or you can read it yourself and say, these are like the points where I think this conversation could get hung up because they don't quite get this, and highlight it and say, before a meeting, I'd love you to see these stats, or I'd help you to understand that I might look, maybe I look weird to you, but here are the reasons why you should think that I can pull this off. Or, but maybe most importantly, to give the founders walking into that pitch meeting the confidence to know that what they've seen in the market is a real opportunity, to know that they know something that the person across the table might not know.
Yeah. So this guide, can we download it anywhere?
Yes, it's on LinkedIn. It's on my profile page there. It's for free. And again, people are free to take it, copy it, change it, morph it, make it fit their context, take parts out, disagree with some other parts, it's completely open source.
Okay. Well, that's very cool. So to wrap up, I want to ask you for some personal advice. So I'm building an AI coach that connects female founders with investors. And my first vertical, interestingly, is female health, because I agree that we have a huge challenge to solve there, and there's let's say an extraordinary amount of value that especially female founders can bring there. But from your perspective, what is an essential element for that funding coach to do its job?
I think there's a lot of like basic mechanics that you can learn as you raise money. How do you filter the funds so that you talk and spend your time and energy on the ones that can actually fund you in your region, at your stage, your amount, the sector, etc. Um, do you go pitch first to the funds that you don't desperately want on board, so that by the time you get the meetings with what you really want, you have practiced? How do you take feedback? How do you build a deck? How do you figure out how much money to ask for? How do you build urgency and competitiveness into the round so that you have some negotiation power? I mean, there are many, many elements to fundraising, and I think taking some of the sort of knowledge that you can find in a book would probably be really helpful. Yeah, there's probably I'll encourage you to read this guide as well, because I think sometimes what makes people sign the deal or not is not about the numbers and the business idea. It's very invisible and kind of social things. What are you wearing? How do you talk? Who do you bring to the meeting? Who did the introduction? Blah, da, 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 da. It's like a social dance, and it's frustrating. And women are disadvantaged in that social dance. But I think it's good to know that it exists also for your own mental health. When you've had 100 no's, am I doing something wrong, or am I part of a big systemic problem?
Mm-hmm. Or am I
But you also have to
barking up the wrong tree?
You're barking up the wrong tree. And also, everybody is on a learning curve. I mean, you should take feedback, and probably your first version of the deck was really crap. So
Yeah.
So yeah. But I love that you're building this, and hopefully many people will find it and end up raise money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this, and thank you for all the wisdom and knowledge you've shared with us today. So Ida Tin, if people want to connect with you and learn more about Sprint, that is SPRIND, by the way, so with a D from Dirk Jan at the end, or about the FemTech Assembly, where would you like to send them?
Thank you for asking. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media person, so LinkedIn is pretty much the only platform where I'm really active right now.
Cool. And then we'll link to your LinkedIn page in the show notes. So Ida Tin, thank you very much for this conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for all the wisdom again. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And as always, until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to episode 140 of Women Disrupting Tech, titled How a FemTech Pioneer is Fixing Women's Health Infrastructure with Ida Tin. Special thanks to Kasia Pokrop for her help in getting Ida on the podcast. If you have any questions for Ida, please leave them in the comments on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. I do read all the comments, and I'll make sure you get an answer. If you want to connect with Ida or learn more about her work with the FemTech Assembly, please use the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog, and on Substack, you can find the link to the show notes in the caption. If you found this episode useful, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Once again, thank you for listening, I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, as always, keep being awesome.